Welcome to the Working Without Waste podcast, powered by ERC Midwest, the podcast that's all about sharing ideas and stories that increase your productivity and decrease waste in your business and personal life. I'm your host, Mike Malatesta, one of the leaders here at ERC Midwest. And today I've got Steve Grubbs with me. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. Happy to be here.
So Steve is the CEO and founder of Chalkbytes, which is a virtual reality curriculum company that creates training, corporate training, and other types of training for things like safety training. I saw umpire training. I saw orientation for college students, Steve. I saw a bunch of stuff. So Chalkbytes is this really cool company that I became aware of when Steve was on my other podcast, which is called How Did It Happen. We went into a whole bunch of stuff there, but I couldn't get away from this Chalkbytes thing. And when I saw that he was launching, I wanted to get him on the show to talk about it because this is transformational stuff. So with that, Steve, what is Chalkbytes all about?
Well, so first of all, I recently hired a CEO, so now I'm the founder and the chief technology officer at Chalkbytes.
Okay, got it.
I have to work on my other projects. Chalkbytes is a corporate training company that uses new technologies to advance and create greater efficiencies and greater memory retention for corporate training, both safety training, HR training, Osha training, those sorts of things. And what we know is that as time goes by, new technologies are developed and those new technologies become mainstream. Some companies adopt these new technologies in their processes and systems earlier than others. And typically, those that are willing to be leaders in these spaces are the ones who reap the first mover advantages from it. And so we work with companies like that to provide training in virtual reality. And also our earlier products are mobile products that have nothing to do with virtual reality. So it's both push to mobile, so one set of solutions, and then our newest set of solutions are delivered through virtual reality.
Okay, so virtual reality is a lot different than what people are sort of used to in virtual training or online training. Can you explain to us how you got into virtual reality in the first place, Steve, and how you've brought that into your training in a way that I don't think I've seen anywhere else?
Yeah, so we do virtual reality training different than anyone else, as far as we know. I first got into virtual reality in 2016. I tried it and I realized that this was a transformational technology. We began dipping our toe into the water, figuring out how it works and learning how to deploy it. The challenge in 2016 is that the costs were significantly higher than they are today. Today, the cost has fallen about 400%. What used to cost between $1,500 and $2,000. Now the headset will cost between $300 and $800, and the annual license somewhere in the range of $500 to $600. So it's a lot less than it used to be. And the nice thing is that the benefits have increased while the costs have decreased.
So explain that, Steve.
Sure. So PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, recently released a study in June that showed that the memory retention from training in virtual reality was 4x traditional training. And what that means is that you can take a group of employees and you can divide them in half. Half of them you train the traditional way and half you train in virtual reality. And in these two cases, you're going to have a 4x retention. People are going to remember that information better. Miami Children's Hospital showed the same thing. theirs was even more dramatic. They had an 80% retention for a year later for people trained in virtual reality, while people that were trained the traditional way only had a 20% retention after 1 week. So you can see that the benefits are dramatic. The cost of the headsets have come down from $1,500 to $2,000 to $300 with the Oculus Quest 2, and our cost to deliver live training in virtual reality is less than $1 per training session per employee. So and that's live training with experts in the room with you. So it's a pretty dramatic difference than sending somebody to a conference or having them drive across town or bringing somebody into your workplace from out of town or maybe even across town.
So let's get into the dramatic difference, because I feel like as people are hearing what you just said, they just might not have the sort of knowledge base to put it together for to understand what it really is. So I think everyone is familiar with getting OSHA training or DOT training or you name it training in the workplace, with someone coming in and basically taking 4 hours of your day or 6 hours of your day or whatever the requirement is and putting you through a workbook, and maybe there's some tests you take along the way, that kind of thing. And or people going online to JJ Keller or some of the other training companies out there and doing it online for an hour or 2 hours or whatever. But VR and the glasses and all that, totally different. And when you said live VR, that sort of made me think, I don't even know what live VR is. So really describe the difference for people so they see what this really is, they can wrap their heads around it.
Sure. Let's use the example of you probably flew a fair amount before this whole pandemic thing, is my guess.
Sure.
And think about the training that pilot went through, right? So the first thing that a pilot goes through is they're going to be in class. They're going to go through some book learning. The second thing is they're going to go into a simulator and they're going to learn to fly the plane in a simulator before they're allowed to actually sit in a pilot seat or co-pilot seat and fly a real plane for obvious reasons. Well, the reason that was only done for, very expensive operations was because it was just too expensive to build simulators that small and medium-sized companies could afford. So, it used to cost millions of dollars to create a simulator for Ford Motor Company, John Deere, the United States Air Force, United Airlines, whatever the case might be. Now that cost has come down to tens of thousands. So if you're a small or medium-sized company, you still probably don't want to pay tens of thousands of dollars to create a simulator. But what if somebody creates that simulator and then sells it to 1,000 companies? Suddenly then the cost is dramatically less. So first think in terms of a simulator. So now the cost of the simulator headset, somewhere between $300 and $800, depending on which one you choose. And the cost of the license to have access to it is tens of dollars. So now this is affordable for any small or medium-sized company. The level of training that previously pilots and engineers at Ford Motor Company were getting. The second piece of that, though, is classes. So let's say that the number one source of property and casualty claims in American businesses, and this is probably true throughout most of the world, are forklifts. People, receive very little forklift training. They might go through an hour or two of classes and they hop on those things and they start whipping around a warehouse. And of course, they end up running into things, damaging things, having pallets fall off, or in some cases, the whole forklift falls over and the operator in about 30 instances a year are crushed to death. So these are very serious issues, but we've never had a simulator like the jet before. Well, now we do. That's what we created. So that's the simulator. But before you step onto the simulator, you step into our live class with Greg, our experienced forklift trainer. And you and people from all over the country step into class. Greg is going to go through his PowerPoint slides. You're going to walk around a forklift. He's going to point out all the safety features. We're going to talk about it. And then he's going to instruct you to switch to the simulator and begin driving that. And you are assessed as you drive that simulator. So instead of paying millions of dollars as it cost previously, or the $100,000 we've invested to develop this, now you pay $110 a month for access to the forklift and a whole host of other simulators and training processes. That's the deal. That's where we are today.
And if I'm training with Greg, then I'm in my office or my workplace, and I have my VR glasses on,
Yep.
and I'm not at so I'm logging in with the VR glasses essentially, right?
Pop the headset on, and you click over to the forklift training classroom, and you're off and running.
Okay, and then so everything then happens from there. So all the movements that I'm making and everything are real for me because I can see what I'm doing, but no one else can see. Basically, is that accurate?
Exactly. And think about, and I know it's been a while for both of us, but think about when you learned to drive.
Yeah.
My guess is you had a classroom, and then you actually got into a car and drove it.
Yeah. Okay.
If as you finished your classroom learning, were you prepared to be out on the road?
Well, I probably thought I was, Steve, but the reality was I was not, of course.
But bottom line is, we learn as humans, we learn kinesthetically,
Yes.
or we learn by doing. Almost everything, whether it's fishing or playing basketball or driving a car or sewing, it doesn't matter. We all learn kinesthetically. But how do you learn kinesthetically? Well, you either go out there and do, or now you can pop on an inexpensive virtual reality headset and you can do inside virtual reality with haptics and visuals and audio and feedback and an experienced instructor.
And so a company to participate in this, the only thing the company needs to do is purchase headsets, right? For however many they want, or
we provide the headset.
You provide the headset. Or how does that work?
So you sign up for a 12-month license, $110 a month. Maybe it actually might be slightly more than that. And we ship you a headset, and then you're off and running.
Huh. And how do
you have access then to both the headset as well as the live classes, which are human resources, fire safety, defibrillator, Osha training, forklift training, and we're adding more every month. And then you also have access to the simulators.
And so depending on the size of the company or the number of people that have to train, you're paying per employee for that? Or
No, per license. So for example, let's say that you are a mid-sized license company and maybe you buy 5 licenses or 10.
Okay.
Your cost is going to be roughly $5,000 to $10,000 a year in that case. But then you have access to 20 live classes a month, and you can put your people in those live classes, and you also have access to the simulators and all of the pre-recorded content.
And what would that be, pre-recorded?
So for example, all of our classes are pre-recorded. So let's say that it doesn't work out for you to sit in on one of the live classes. Maybe you're busy doing something else. So you can go into the pre-recorded class, and it's just like the live class. It's all 3D and spatial. You can walk around the forklift with the instructor. He's doing everything just as he did in the class, except it's not live. So if you ask him a question, he won't respond. You can hear the question the others are asking in class, but he won't respond to those questions.
Okay. And so that brings the flexibility, I guess, up in my mind, so that you can take the training anytime you want. So if I'm on second shift or third shift or first shift, doesn't matter because the training's there for me whenever, right? Except I can't ask a live question. But of course, when you take an online class, you can't ask a live question typically. And when you watch a recording of someone who did it on first shift but won't stick around and do it on second or third shift, you don't get to ask any questions either, I suppose.
Our hope is to offer second and third shift classes as we grow.
Okay.
We're a startup, and
Sure.
so you raise the money to build the product, and you raise the money to expand it, and eventually you get there.
Yeah. How do you develop the training itself? What's the production look like, the backstage? How does it all come together, Steve?
Well, there's essentially three pieces that come together. The first is the SME, the subject matter expert. So we got to have someone who is an expert in Osha or forklifts or defibrillators help us to create the curriculum and to review what we do. And then you have the coders, the people who code it all, and you have the designers, people who create the 3D objects. So when you've got a fire extinguisher, let's say that we're doing fire safety training. So you are learning to abandon a building or to put the fire out. And this is a big decision. Anytime there's a fire in a building, your employees who've never gone through this before, right? Suddenly they're forced to make quick decisions that could be life or death, or could mean the difference between millions of dollars of inventory being destroyed unnecessarily. So they have to know from a firefighter expert, when do you choose just to run like crazy and get out and call 911 when you're out of the building? Or when do you pick up the fire extinguisher and start to put it out? What are the things that create those risks that it could accelerate quickly? So our class puts people into a building and a fire starts, and then the firefighter walks them through. Okay, just grab the fire extinguisher, we'll put this out. Or this is the moment you run for the exit and don't touch that elevator button there. Hit that exit door right there. Now, a lot of this people already know, but the value of actually doing it, like with the defibrillator, is that if you've never done it before, people panic and make mistakes. If you've been through a scenario where you have done these things, then people are more likely to make the right decisions.
And in these trainings, you, just like you mentioned with the forklift, I mean, you, for all intents and purposes, you are handling a fire extinguisher, you're handling a defibrillator, you're handling a fork truck. That's
correct.
the sense.
With the defibrillator, you're not just handling defibrillator, there is a person dying right in front of you. And the decisions that you make determines whether that person lives or dies. So should I start defibrillating or should I call 911? That's a big decision right there.
Right.
In the time that you fumble with your phone, a person could die. But at the same time, you can only keep that person alive so long with a defibrillator and heart compression. So these are, 99.9% of us, maybe even bigger odds than that, have never had to touch a defibrillator. And if you have, and what our firefighter says is that people have defibrillators at the workplace, but because they've never dealt with it before, they don't want to touch it. They don't know what to do. They're afraid of it.
Right.
We actually give them a defibrillator. They use it. They bring that person back to life.
Wow.
Hopefully. Maybe they die. Maybe it takes 2 tries.
It depends on whether they had your training or not, I think.
Well, that's my point. In the training, their person may die or they may live.
Okay. So putting one of these courses together, you mentioned the 3 sort of groups that are involved in putting it together. How long does something like this take, Steve?
Well, it depends how busy we are, but let's say we're not busy and we're just like attacking it. Then, the curriculum usually takes a couple weeks to finalize. And then the 3D object creators spend, a couple weeks creating it. And then the coders spend, 4 to 8 weeks getting it all put together. And it depends on how complicated it is. The forklift is very complicated. the physics of making a forklift work and tip over and all of those things, that took 9 months. But like a defibrillator, 4 to 6 weeks, fire extinguisher, 4 to 6 weeks.
And does it start with you doing like your own sort of video of the particular training and then creating a virtual blueprint? Or
videos are very helpful. Fortunately, there's this thing we use called YouTube, and they've got every video you can imagine. So we start there and then go from there.
And when the person is done taking the training, they get a certificate of some sort, like you would normally expect from training, or what's the deliverable?
The deliverable is that in the online analytics program, they're checked off as having completed this training. So that if the workplace is sued, or if they actually need to use it, we know who has been trained and who has not been trained. In addition, once we build up enough data, you'll be able to compare your workforce to an aggregate number of all workforces. So this analytics will be of tremendous value for insurance companies and workplaces and that type of thing.
And are those analytics something they would that a company would access through your website or your portal or something? Or
yeah, they would sign into their account. They would sign up their employees, and each employee then keeps track of what they've completed, what they've not completed, and et cetera, et cetera.
How do you find your subject matter experts?
That's a good question. There's no specific way. It's mostly reaching out to people that we know, or they'll come to us through LinkedIn, whatever the case might be. But we have a certain criteria. They have to have at least 10 years experience, and be generally well regarded and have all the right certifications.
And I guess I'm wondering too, like, how did you decide where you were going to start with the training? Like, for example, we're talking mostly about, workplace training, but as I mentioned, you've got sales, well, that's workplace too, sales training, umpire training, identifying counterfeit currency. I guess maybe that's for bank training or something. How did you decide?
Retail training.
Oh, retail. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Okay.
And those, Mike, those are part of the Chalkbytes mobile, not virtual reality.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but as far as the virtual reality training, I went to Google and I said, where are the most workplace accidents? And it gave me a list of the top 10 workplace accidents, what they're caused by. And then I went to the places where people sell virtual reality applications, and I said, what applications are out there? And so we found empty rooms that hadn't been filled, and we walked into the biggest empty rooms first.
Well, this is amazing stuff, Steve. I mean, it's funny because listening to you talk about it, it's almost like, oh yeah, this is sort of something that's not that's been around, but something that's been in your head for a long time. But I think for most people, including myself, this is not something that has been in your head. What do you?
Sorry about that. I was going to pull up a video and maybe share it with you.
Oh, sure.
If you keep going, I'm just searching for that correct video. Sorry about that. I should mute this. So yeah, what I thought I might do is pull up the Chalkbytes forklift video and just show you 30 seconds of it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Our forklift simulator. If I could share this with you.
I think hold
on a second. Let me try to do that properly. You keep talking, Mike, while I get this set up for us.
Well, I guess, for me, I want to know, like, where, I know that you're sort of just getting started, but where does this go? I mean,
yeah. Well, we believe that scenario training So, for example, let's talk about human resources. In the case of human resources, learning to hire well, learning to fire well, learning to give reviews. A lot of people think you don't really need training for it. You just do it. You just hire and you just fire. If there's something that I learned, and I keep learning, hiring well is hard. Right. Interviewing well is hard. You think it's easy, then you get in there in the interview and you sort of run out of questions after 10 minutes. With our live HR training, you're in there in a class and then you are sitting there and you're interviewing somebody, and that person is a HR professional, and others in the class get a watch, and then somebody else steps up and they sit through a scenario training session. And it's a wonderful way to learn how to hire or fire or give reviews by actually doing it with somebody who's there to provide feedback. And so there's a whole host of places that scenario training can matter, whether it's, for example, investigating child abuse. How do 22-year-olds coming out of social work school? We've had some conversations there. So there's a lot of places that scenario training can make a big difference, more than just like dealing with an object, a forklift or a scissor lift or a dump truck, more than something like that.
Okay. Have you found the video? Are you able to do that, or?
Yeah, I did. Can I share this with you? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and play this. Can you see it, Mike?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'll just play a piece of this. That's the warehouse you're seeing. It tells you how to use your controllers, discover, learn, and so you're going to explore the forklift, all the safety pieces, and at the end there's a little quiz you take.
The overhead guard is the metal roof that helps protect the operator from falling objects. It is supported by posts at each corner of the cab. Before operating, make sure there are no broken. The assist grips are.
You can see this is the classroom portion that's actually in the simulator.
Okay.
And this is what I'll show you what the corporate training center actually looks like.
Welcome to the Chalkbytes Corporate Training Center. As you can see,
so this is me giving a tour of the corporate training facility, and you can see here, this is the body with the defibrillator.
For the defib, yeah.
Yeah, and so this is, I'm not going to train people on how to use a defibrillator, but this is the classroom.
Virtual world looks very much like the real world. I'm going to show you just a few things here today that gives examples of the type of training we can do in virtual reality that is in many ways better than the training that people can receive in the real world. So let's go ahead and start with the defibrillator. As you can see here,
you can have 25 people in here all at the same time, talking to each other, talking to the instructor, whatever the case might be.
This is the defibrillator, and we like to pass this around, let everybody hold it, and show them the various buttons on here of this device that operate.
So now I'm just going to fast forward real quick to the Osha training room, which is.
Welcome to the Chalkbytes Osha training warehouse. As you can see, if you look around just a little bit, it looks like a standard warehouse. But on this wall right here, this is our OSHA violation scoreboard.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so I'll stop sharing, but essentially in the training warehouse, there's violations all over. And at first you walk through with a trainer, an OSHA trainer explaining, this is a problem and this is why, and this is a problem. Then it all gets randomized. And now you have to walk through on your own and click on the violations and find them. And as you do, it gets scored.
That's phenomenal. That is phenomenal stuff. Steve, so people need to get a hold of you and check this out. How do they contact you, Chalkbytes? What's the way to go here?
Yeah, so reach us through chalkbytes.com. Bytes is B-I-T-E-S, chomp. And or you can email me at steve@chalkbytes.com, and we'll get you set up. And we give tours all the time. You don't have to have a virtual reality headset. All of this can be accessed through a laptop as well. It's sort of like if you've ever played Call of Duty and you're manipulating a character in this World War II battle. You can do the same thing in our training center. We think that it's far better to have a virtual reality headset on and do it, but it also works through a laptop. So chalkbytes.com or Steve at chalkbytes.com.
So if you've played a video game, you know what this is going to feel like.
That's exactly right. It's straightforward. We try to take all the friction points out of it, and it's still new technology, but we make it as easy as possible.
Well, I'm blown away, Steve. Thank you so much for coming on the show today and talking about Chalkbytes and what you're doing. And congratulations on getting it off the ground and getting this type of thing out here where folks like us and the clients that we work with can really figure out a better way to get their people trained.
Thanks, Mike. And we just need people to know about it. It's coming fast, and we want to be the ones that help introduce it to the American business world.
Well, I'm going to see what I can help to make that happen.
I'll do the same. I'll share the podcast. So thank you.
All right. Thanks, Steve.